Good evening, everyone. Just wait for a minute or two. No? I see some are still trying to join. Sorry for being late. Thanks for your patience. We just finished a department meeting. So let's try Zoom this time around. It's my second time to host in a Zoom meeting. So let me know if I'm messing things up. My first time to host a Zoom meeting was last night in my other class. I like Zoom better actually because of you can put virtual backgrounds, I think. So let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. Can you guys see my screen? And can you hear me, by the way? Okay, that's good. That's good. Great. And great that you guys know how to use the Zoom controls now. Raise hand, the thumbs up. That's great. That's great. Okay. Right. I think we can start. No? Again, thank you for your patience. We had a department meeting in Econ, so just ended 5 minutes ago. So let's proceed. Module 3. But before I discuss Module 3, I think tonight's session, just like last night in my other class, this will be a short session in terms of the technical aspect, because I don't expect all of you to be finished with Module 3. A lot of the concepts are a bit technical. It's short, but quite technical. So I'll discuss only the first half of Module 3 and discuss the other half next week. So, but I wanted to spend some time in the beginning to talk about upcoming assignments. I don't know if some of you already saw in Canvas, I posted instructions for assignment 2, which is the graded assignment, group work this time around. So I'll discuss those things first. Okay. Again, we can use the codes you guys suggested, or you can use the Zoom controls as well. If you want to talk, you can raise your hand, etc. So just let me know. And again, thanks to you guys for that suggestion. All right. And again, let me know if I'm going too fast, because some of the concepts, especially for some of you that have forgotten your basic economics or high school economics, some might be a bit too technical. So let me know if I'm going too fast. I try to simplify things in Canvas and in my synchronous sessions. So just let me know still if you want further elaboration. So assignment number 1, this is more for those who will turn in late assignment 1. I don't think that's applicable to this section. But in future assignments, though, just in case you'll turn something late, I might need some proof that you finished the assignment, but you're just having internet connectivity issues. So I need to see date-modified screenshot, showing basically that you finished that file on the deadline. Then you can submit it a day or two after, if you're really having internet difficulties. Because in the Philippines, we really have a lousy signal most of the time. So that's that. So Module 4, just in case, actually I'm pleasantly surprised. I think 2 classmates of yours are almost done or done with Module 3. Because I wrote in my suggested pace guide in Module 0, if you remember, or if you can refer back to it, I said my suggested pace is you cover Module 3 from Thursday last week to October 4. So I'm planning to cover module, I'm planning you guys to cover module 4 from October 5 to 18. Module 4 is a bit longer and there's more readings, a lot of readings. If you notice, I kept the readings a bit light for module 3. I provided a lot of videos and summaries. No? So, but module 4, I will provide a lot of readings. No? So please be ready with that. So I'll try to post the first two topics on Monday, October 5, and the last two topics, population and SMEs, on October 12. But I might be able to publish the agri taxation sectors before Monday. I'll try to. I'm just finishing. I have all the materials. It's just a matter of polishing canvas. So, because I mean, some of you might already want to start Module 4 or at least see the readings that are required. Okay. So just to clarify, here in this class, you have four things make up your grade. Discussion board, and then you have 3 assignments. The first one is what you turned in last month. The second one is assignment 2. It's a group work. The third one is the final integrated output, and that's common for your NSTP, KISS, and marketing. But apparently, that's not necessarily the case all the time. I think in most cases, your final your groupings for the final output assignment 3, your groupings for NSTP, KISS, your marketing, as well as SocSc13 are the same. But I've had cases. Wait, let me try to mute everyone. I think someone has accidentally unmuted him or herself. Let me just check. Can you guys kindly mute yourselves if you can? I would appreciate that. I think I can mute everyone. There you go. Okay. Because I'm hearing some background noise. All right. So apparently, in 1 or 2 cases, the groupings for NSTP, KISS, and marketing were not the same. The ideal scenario is for all 3 subjects, it's the same group for the final integrated output. So there was I'm not sure if it's my other section or in this section. So apparently there was one case where it's not the same. So the decision here, I conferred with my my other faculty members. It can be different, but we will anchor our groupings with NSTP, KISS. So basically what this means is your group for SocSc13 for the final integrated output will be the same as your NSTP, KISS group. I hope that's clear. So you will turn in the same output. It's one output that's common to both NSTP and SocSc13. That's your final integrated output. That's the livelihood one. I think most of you or all of you have already had your first session with your NSTP formators. So they provided guidelines, which I'll go through in a while. We'll follow the same guidelines. It's the same paper, it's the same output as your final NSTP output. So you won't have to turn it into me separately or to your NSTP formator separately. It's one final output. And in most cases, it also satisfies your marketing output as well. So the guidelines that were issued by your NSTP formators is the same for us. So this will be familiar to you. I will actually revise the guidelines in Module 0. I placed there a draft guideline, so which I indicated anyway, that it's still in draft. It's basically you guys are assigned different communities. So it's basically a description of the issues being faced by the community. The livelihood intervention, I think most of you will be tackling some livelihood interventions and a story about that. What's the goal? What are they trying to achieve? And some of the lessons learned from your online engagement. Unfortunately, your engagement will be limited to online this time around. Hopefully, in the future, you'll have more face-to-face interactions with communities. So it's the same again, output as your NSTP big quiz. And in most cases, also your marketing. So you can call it assignment 3. Not to be confused, because someone asked this over the weekend. Someone asked me, was assignment 2 different than assignment, the final integrated output? Yes. So they are distinct. So this one has nothing to do with NSTP because assignment 2. We call it, to simplify things, let's call it assignment 3. Final major output, or whatever you want to call it. But this one, at the end of module 4, is your first group assignment. So if you remember, I did a poll. Let's see the results. I think you guys know the results already. So because of you guys, overwhelmingly majority said, out of 28 responses, overwhelmingly more than 80% said we want to keep the same groupings. So that's good. Okay, yeah. The good thing with that is before you embark on because the final output is worth 30% of your grade. So the good thing is before you embark on that final output, you'll be able to practice your team dynamics. So it's going to be the same group as your final output groupings, your NSTP groupings. So the deadline, Monday, October 19, 11:59 p.m. I will require 2 outputs. This might be a bit challenging to you guys, but it's a group effort. No? So I hope you guys can do this as a team. You can divide up the work. I'll require a paper and a video. Paper, sorry, I forgot to edit this. So paper, the format, same as assignment 1, it's up to the group, not more than 10 pages. Again, single or double spaced. But as for the fonts, I made a mistake here. I should edit this. It's Times New Roman 12 or Arial 11 or Calibri 11. And of course, reasonable margins. Can be 0.1 margins on each side. If you can do it, if you can have a shorter paper, much better, like 5 pages or 7 pages, much better. Just don't exceed them. Okay. And of course, a video. Video to present a summary of the paper, of what's inside the paper. And what will I do with the video? I will be posting it in Canvas so that your classmates, your fellow classmates can comment via discussion boards. So that's the purpose of the video. I won't require everyone to read the papers because that will take too much time. Videos, no? So everyone can comment on the other policies that will be discussed. So the format is up to you. Basta 5 minutes. Could be a verbal presentation with deck, like what I'm doing each session. You can be creative, do an animation. There are a lot of automated tools now. But I don't want this to be a burden. I want you to put more effort on the paper, on the substance, rather than the video. No? If you're pressed for time, kahit yung video, do it last. No? Of course, it's better to do it last because what will be your basis if you don't have the paper yet? So put a premium on the paper, not the video. So what will you discuss? I've assigned groups already. I randomized groupings. No? I did an Excel randomizer thing. randomized assignments. So Module 4 is all about policies. At the end of Module 4, we'll be covering these 4 thematic sectors, 4 thematic policy areas. Agri, fiscal and taxation, population and demography, and SMEs, small and medium enterprises. Or now they include micro enterprises as well. So for agriculture, rice tariffication law, very controversial, very interesting. That's assigned to Buklod Tao, NSTP group. I'm sure you guys already know your community, your assigned communities. Another policy area, Agri-Agra Reform Credit Act to Canton Calamay. Fiscal taxation, this is the only policy I'm assigning that's not yet a law. It's still a bill. If you saw the assignment, I included a short video and a link to an article basically describing how a bill becomes a law, how the legislative process works in the Philippines. Because I'm not sure if you guys have had Pol Sci already. I don't know if it's the first sem or second sem of third year. I took it when I was in third year, when I was doing MECO. Another fiscal, very controversial is the TRAIN, Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Act, assigned to CMC Mindoro. Population, another controversial law, Responsible Parenthood, the RH Act 2012, assigned to the LAMCO NSTP group. And SMEs, assigned to LEARC. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. The only two laws here that are not controversial are the Agri-Agra Reform Credit Act. It's a bit controversial in some ways, and the Magna Carta for SMEs. And the rest is really controversial. So what do I want you to cover? I want you to cover a lot of things. So, this one. What are the goals and objectives of the law or the bill? What are the development challenges that's targeted to be addressed? Think back to Module 1. How the goal objectives are connected to the parameters. And the models we have or we will be discussing in Module 3. The Harrod-Domar, Rostow, etc., human capital. The summary of the provisions, of course, the status of implementation and results, and effects, if applicable, because if it's still a bill, it's not a law, then it hasn't been implemented yet. The CREATE bill, for example. Controversies in terms of provisions or implementation, where again, almost all of these laws have controversies. I want you to examine both sides and an assessment and a critique of the law or the bill. What are the strengths, weaknesses in terms of the text, the objectives, or in terms of the implementation and the effects. And then, just in case, put your list. Of course, I don't expect, again, you guys to be policy experts or experts in program, just like assignment 1. No? I just want to see your thinking, that you've thought critically. So I want you to come up with recommendations as well. Just in case Congress decides, let's say, to amend the law, which they do from time to time. No? The Magna Carta for SMEs is actually an amendment of a previous law. So is the Agri-Agra law. So just in case, you'll have the opportunity, for example, to provide recommendations. What will these be? So I will try to start, but do your own research. So I'll try to support you guys with some set of good references. But just a tip: a lot of the Ateneo faculty, especially Department of Economics folks and IPC, they've done a lot of research on a lot of these laws. So that can be a good starting point. Okay. Any questions on that? I'll spend 1 minute to answer any concerns if there are. Feel free. No questions? All right. Just one final tip, no? Since I haven't posted Module 4 and I don't expect all of you to have been finished with Module 3. If for example, you're almost done with Module 3 and you're still waiting for me to publish the initial sections of Module 4, try slowly reading the law that's been assigned to you. If the law is too complex for you, and it's boring, no? Legislation is really boring. It's actually good if you're finding it hard to sleep at night. It's good to actually read law because it's really dry, it's boring, and sometimes it's written in such an archaic manner that it's hard to understand. If that's the case, there are a lot of primers out there explaining the important provisions of the law. But be mindful that you have to check different sources because some of the primers may miss out on some other important aspects. So try to be exhaustive. All right, I don't see any questions. So for the next half of this session, I'll try to cover or dig deeper, elaborate further the first half of Module 3, what's in Canvas. But before that, I found something last week on Facebook, no, posted by ABS-CBN, which relates very well. This might be interesting to you guys in terms of the poverty thresholds. So this is according to PIDS. No? So they came up with this sort of bracket level. So again, you remember the poverty line. So they're saying basically if you're above the poverty line, you're low income up to ×2, diba? So your lower middle class, if your income, this is family of 5 by the way, no? For a month. So if your income is ×2 of the poverty threshold, you're lower middle class. If it's ×4 of the poverty threshold, your family is middle class. So that's the core middle class. If it's ×7, then it's upper middle class. If it's ×12, upper but not rich, and then ×20 or above, it's you're rich. So that's how they broke it. It's sort of a quadratic exponential formula. So I just found it interesting. Maybe you guys also find it interesting. All right. So Module 3, same outline as the one in Canvas. So we'll start with the classical and end with the neoclassical, which is free markets. We'll study 2 important things, Rostow's model and Harold Domar. And then next week, we'll finish the second half of Module 3. And maybe start introducing Module 4. All right. So we start with the classical economic perspectives. Again, just raise your hand or say something in the chat box if you have any questions. All right. I always like to start my class with cartoons because it makes things simple, funny, but with one image you prove a point, you make a point. All right. This is in Canvas. I got it from a website I think called Economics Discussion, which is really a great resource as well. All right. So Rosto, Todaro, I assigned Todaro to you guys. Todaro doesn't really discuss this at great length. So I spent some time in Canvas to discuss it and provided the video as well. The video was nice music actually. I mean, it doesn't really fit the topic, but I hope you guys have finished watching that video and going through this in Canvas. So it's basically Rosto provided a general linear stages of growth. When I say linear, it means you have to go step by step. You can't jump. That's what we mean by linear. So it's basically 5 stages of development or growth. So he's basically arguing everyone starts out in a traditional society, agri. And it's not commercial agri, it's basically you plant because you need something to eat. So that's subsistence agriculture. So there's limited technology, and society is really backward. And eventually, people start transacting, selling, and then they go to the next stage. Then agriculture is no longer just subsistence. Subsistence means it's for your own survival. People start exploiting it for commercial purposes, to earn money in exchange for higher standards of living. And Rosto is also saying that other industries still basic, like mining and extractives, start to develop. So still very manual, still very backward, uh, still minimal processing, minimal infrastructure, still not at par with advanced economies. Uh, so it's preconditions for takeoff. Hardly any manufacturing sector, some processing of agriculture and some manufacturing, but not a lot. And a lot of researchers are arguing the Philippines is actually still in this second stage, but on our way, on the cusp of going to the takeoff stage. Because, again, as we learn in succeeding modules or succeeding topics here in Module 3, we haven't really had a robust manufacturing sector. If we have a manufacturing sector, majority is basically imported, and then we put something additional, and that's what we sell. So it's really not our manufacturing. It's basically we're very import dependent. So they're saying, for stage 2, once agricultural trade blooms, there's more commerce, then that's the time the country builds more infrastructure, connectivity, etc. There are social classes beginning to emerge. Once you really have good connectivity and good infrastructure as a backbone, then that's basically your jump off point to the takeoff stage. And the takeoff stage really is one of the main features is really a robust manufacturing sector. Not just textiles, but basically you start to argue that many countries, backward countries, let's say Bangladesh, they start like with textiles, garments, really basic stuff, light manufacturing without really advanced technology. But then you start developing that further, then you start introducing technology, that takeoff then becomes more mature. You get to the fourth stage, especially if it exceeds 10% of your economic output. I will use in this class, in this course, I will use the terms GDP, GNP, economic output, national income interchangeably. They all mean the same thing. Think of GDP, national income, output as the pie. Remember, we've been talking about growing the pie. The economy is a big pie. Okay? So they're saying if 10% or more of that pie is devoted to manufacturing and people start producing more, people start to earn more social classes emerge, more people have money to invest in manufacturing, durable goods, then you can reach the fourth stage, which is the drive to maturity. So now the narrow manufacturing sector expands and diversifies. Now you're going into more advanced technology, high tech. Rosto was born prior to the internet stage, but now if you apply this here, it's like high tech, Silicon Valley type, wider and more advanced technology, more advanced manufacturing, wider commercial base, more people are affluent. Then eventually that creates a virtuous cycle of people getting rich, investing, advanced technology, etc. Then you eventually reach high mass consumption. Then you start to sell and be more competitive in terms of exporting to other countries like Germany, like the US, Silicon Valley, they started exporting even their technology. And then because people become affluent, there's high mass consumption. And then the producers are incentivized to keep churning out goods because people are rich. They can afford to buy. It creates that virtuous cycle of production of goods, including luxury goods, and people buying. So it reinforces each other. So that's the high mass consumption. So that's Rostow. What are the criticisms? I did not include this in Canvas. No? Because I don't want to focus too much on the criticisms, but on what lesson we can distill from Rostow. One of the criticisms was the linearity of the model. Again, researchers are saying, no, it's not necessarily linear. Like us, some features actually can coincide. Like in the Philippines, you go to certain regions or certain cities like Makati, BGC, there's affluence, there's mass consumption, there's mass consumption, but at the same time, we're still a bit backward because there's still no advanced manufacturing. So different elements of the different models can exist at different stages. No? So there are overlapping, and it's not necessarily linear. Again, high mass consumption can be part of different stages. And the perception of agriculture as backward, that's not true. Think of advanced countries that have agriculture as a cornerstone of their economy. Netherlands, New Zealand. No, they say New Zealand. When I say agriculture, that includes livestock. No? New Zealand, they're saying there are more cows than people, more cattle than people. So, more animals than people. So it's agriculture isn't necessarily backward. No? Subsistence agri is, but commercial no. It can be advanced, and it can be part of your manufacturing. Because once you start developing agribusiness products, like converting crops into what they call value-added products, like processed food, virgin coconut oil, for example, medicine, that's already part of manufacturing, and that's advanced in my opinion. And another criticism of Rostow was, people were saying, where did Rostow come up with the 10% this, 10% that? It's arbitrary. He's saying, rise in the rate of productive investment over 10% of income, GDP. That's kind of arbitrary. And he didn't have any kind of empirical computation to back that up. But again, I wanted not to dwell on the criticisms, but what can we learn from Rostow? If there's one thing that you would want to remember with Rostow, it's the emphasis on investment and manufacturing, which will be part of the Rostow model as well. Of the Harold Domar model as well. He's basically saying you need to focus on manufacturing. You need to build a diversified, robust manufacturing sector, light to heavy industry, in order to really propel your economy. And in many ways, that is true. Actually, researchers have been saying no advanced Western country has really developed without having a really strong manufacturing sector, because they focused on investment. Investment meaning investment in factories, durable equipment, technology, which we will see in Harold Domar. That's why these two models are sort of into Darwin, are sort of and in other books, they're sort of discussed one after the other because of their emphasis on investment and manufacturing. Any questions so far? If I don't see questions, I'll just continue. Just please stop me. All right, Harold and Domar. I just wanted to put this as an icebreaker para hindi masyadong boring. I don't know if you guys are too young to have watched any of the Harold and Kumar movies, but I found it funny, when I was telling my wife, I'll put this picture, para comic relief. And she's like, no, don't put that. But I decided to put it. Harold and Kumar, very funny movies. No? They're not really that well known. No? But check it out if you want good comedy movies. No? Harold and Kumar. The last one was, I think, a few years back. So the real Harold and Kumar are actually these guys who don't look anything like these guys. Mind you, this guy, they're both actually well educated. They're actors, but Kumar, I forget his name, was appointed by Barack Obama as special envoy on like minority affairs of some sort. So these guys, even though they're actors, they're actually highly educated. So moving on to Harold and Kumar, these are the two gentlemen that we'll be talking about the next few slides. Okay. Just a refresher, I included this in Canvas. Basic economics, macroeconomics. So again, when you think of GDP, think of it as a pie. It's the country's economy as a pie, which we want to enlarge. And if you listen well in Module 2, we want the pie to be enlarged, but at the same time, make sure the benefits accrue to more people, not just the rich getting richer and the poor getting crumbs. So, and then not just ensuring that people have adequate income, but also their basic needs are addressed and they are given opportunities. No? Remember the capabilities approach. So GDP, when you talk about the pie, the common economics computation is 4 elements, no? Which you just add up. No? So consumption is what we as consumers and what the private sector consume. If you buy pizza, if you buy something, if you buy a PPE, that item you purchased is consumption. Or if you got a haircut, that's a service, that's counted because it's a good or a service that's produced. But it's the final production, no? Because if it's an input, for example, what's a good example? If I bought pizza, we won't count necessarily the ingredients of the pizza, the consumption. We only count the pizza as a whole because that's double counting. So it's the final good or service. Investment stands for also consumption, what private businesses consume. If they buy stuff, computers, equipment, whatever, that's included as consumption. Non-durable, by the way. Investment, on the other hand, that's what the private sector, think corporations, buy in terms of inventory and durable goods like machinery, equipment, heavy equipment, buildings, factories, etc. Things that's why it's called investment. Things that you invest on that will produce something else, which you can sell later. So it's investment. Government spending, it's like consumption, but it's what government consumes, what government spends. So if government buys food, that's spending. And the last in the formula is net exports. It's basically what we sell outside. We deduct what we import from outside. Exports are what you sell outside. Imports are what we buy from outside. That's basic economics. No? So mathematically speaking, in a sense, Rosto was correct because just arithmetically speaking, if you increase any of these, especially investment, then you increase GDP, you increase the pie. That's basic math. We'll discuss that further later. Other important concepts in basic economics, what's the flip side of consumption is savings. Because if you have your allowance, your baon, whatever you don't use up, whatever you don't spend, becomes your savings. Diba? That's the flip side. In economics, they see savings on a macro level, on a country level, as what you can use for investment, for investing in these things, in inventory, in machineries, etc. Because if you consume something, you don't have money, you lose that money that you can use for other things. And last basic concept in economics are three major factors of production. When we say factors of production, it's basically inputs, things you need to produce something: land, labor, and capital. Capital in economics, because you guys are management students, you're used to capital meaning money or equity or loans. Here, forget about that for SocSc13. Capital here would refer to durable goods, machineries, equipment, etc. Things you will need to produce something, to produce an output. Okay? So it's not money. In management, yes. In accounting, yes. In finance, I think in third year, you'll have your finance, or maybe you're having it right now, or maybe in the next sem. It's capital is durable goods. So it's the I part, investing in durable goods. So that's a refresher for you, economic terms, in case also if you haven't had basic econ yet. All right. Harold Domar basically went a step further than Roston. He really focused on two things. But before I discuss the two things, I'll present first the basic formula. So again, as I told you, you don't necessarily have to sweat the math. This is a simplified, because if you read Todaro, if you're able to read Todaro, he presented a series of formulas. We don't have to discuss that, but feel free to study that, master it if you want, but no need, of course. To simplify things, this is a simplified version of Harold Domar. G equals S divided by K. Basic math. No calculus involved, etc. G stands for the rate of economic growth. Economic growth, as we said, is the increase in the pie. So it's not the pie itself, but it's how fast the pie increases. It's the growth. It's like your belly. How during the pandemic, if you keep eating every day, it's how fast your tummy goes up, not how big your tummy is. It's the rate of increase. That's the G. The level of savings is S. What you don't consume becomes savings. Flip side. And then there's a term he called capital output ratio, which is K. Basically, that's the output, the increase in output that capital or a durable good can produce. Again, in economic terms, it's the marginal product. The term marginal is very important in economics because it's not output per se. By the way, in economics, the product and output can be interchanged. It's not output itself. Output is different from marginal output. Marginal means an increase, an addition. Marginal means additional. So this is the amount of capital, not money, the amount of equipment. Just whenever I say capital, think of it as durable goods, as equipment, automatically. Think of it as machinery, to simplify things. And you just add all of those machineries up. to come up with a country capital score or aggregate. It's the amount of equipment, added equipment around the Philippines, all around the Philippines, needed to increase the output, not to produce, to increase the output. So here's an example para mas madali. If let's say a machinery that costs 100 million pesos increases output by 20 million pesos, the capital output ratio is 5. We're not saying that it produces output worth 20 million. It can be producing, let's say, your initial investment. You have equipment, etc. But if you add another machinery, your total production goes up by 20 million pesos worth of output. That's what it means. It's the additional increase. It's not the output it really produces, but it's the additional output it will contribute. That's the essence of marginality in economic terms. And this is basically, as we'll discuss later, it's bang for the buck, basically. It's how basically how efficient your, we'll go to this later, but it's basically how efficient your machinery can produce output, can increase your productivity. We'll go to more examples later on, so it becomes more clear. But again, stop me if I'm going too fast, or if I'm not being clear. Because I'm trying to simplify things to the extent possible. So going back to the formula, if the level of savings is 10%, which is S, then your capital output ratio, because of this, is 5. So 10% divided by 5, what do you get? 2%. So it's predicting, forecasting that if that's the case, your pie will grow by 2%. Okay, your GDP is not 2%. Your increase in GDP, the rate at which your pie increases is 2%. We'll go back to the example when I discuss these two important things. So Haradomar emphasized two things. One is you can grow the pie if you increase the level of savings. Because again, in economics, savings is what you can use for investment. What you don't consume, they assume that you can convert into purchasing or spending for durable goods, capital, investment. And that's correct, no? Kasi if you go back to the basic formula, if your S is higher, then S can be converted to I, and of course your GDP will increase, diba? So let's revisit the previous example. It's the same example as the previous slide. So again, 2%, our growth, no, our GDP growth is 2% because it was 10% savings, and then the capital is capital output ratio is 5. 100 million capital increases output or productivity by 20 million. So for example, what does this mean? He's basically advocating for countries to increase your investment, consume less, you invest more. You save more so that you can turn savings to investment. If instead of 10% becomes 15%, what happens to the formula? It becomes 3%. So it goes up. It boosts your GDP growth. It makes it grow faster, which is better. That's what we want. Because you increased your investment in durable goods. So that's one. That's the first factor I really wanted to emphasize. Save more, consume less, save more so that you can turn them into investment. The second thing he wanted to emphasize is capital output ratio. We've discussed it. It's basically the productivity of capital. It's what your additional capital you you invest on, the investment, no, will produce, how it will increase production. So it's basically what's your bang for the buck, you know. And this example will further elaborate that. So again, go back to the example. Savings is 10%, not 15. No, go back to the original example. It's still 2% because savings is 10%. The capital output ratio is 5%. If let's say that 100 million is more efficient and it's more high tech, it's more technologically advanced. What if that 100 million does not just increase output by 20 million? What if that additional high-tech, same I don't know, same worth, no, same cost, 100 million. What if that was able to, instead of 20, produce, increase output by 50 million pesos? More bang for the buck. Then your capital output ratio is smaller, which means you need less machinery to increase output by a certain amount. It's more efficient. There's more bang for the buck. Diba? So in this case, just by making your capital more advanced, more efficient, you can grow, or more productive. You can grow your GDP more. You know, so it's not just about investing in any kind of capital. Harold Domar's point was focus on efficiency as well. Fine, invest in durable goods, but to the extent possible, infuse technology. Because with advanced technology, you can be more efficient, you can be more productive. Any questions? There's one. All right. So basically, this one. Did you mean, Lance, did you mean the first point, the savings? Okay. Let me recap the entire Harold Domar in a nutshell. So his basic advice to countries, if you really want to grow the pie faster, bigger, you consume less so that you have extra money, which is defined as savings, and that savings will be what you will use to invest in capital or durable goods. Then you can actually boost your pie even more. But it's much better if your capital output ratio is lower, which means your durable equipment or goods are much more efficient. There's more technology. So that whatever savings you convert into investment, they're more productive. They can give you more bang for the buck because it's more productive. You invest this much and it produces a lot more than low-tech investments in capital. So that in a nutshell. So investment is good, savings is superior, investment is good, but try to prioritize efficient investment, efficient capital, efficient durable goods, so that you can be more productive. Instead of, let's say, I don't know if you guys, you're too young. Back in my day, we had what we call the dot matrix printer that could print, that's a good example. We had a dot matrix printer. It could churn out maybe 5 pages in 5 minutes. But now, if you have the same cost, no, a more advanced printer that can print 5 pages in less than 1 minute, then the capital output ratio is lower. Kasi there's more bang for the buck, no? Same cost, but it produces more. So that's what he's advocating for, no? Also try to be discriminatory. Try to go for those that will be more productive, more efficient. Not just any kind of capital or durability. Is that okay, Lance? All right. Thanks for that question. Hey guys, feel free to stop me at any time, huh? Because if I don't see any questions, I'll just continue. All right. Now, Harold Domar, just like any model, of course, all models will have their own weaknesses. We'll discuss now the weaknesses. One is, before going to this, one of the minor weaknesses is savings. Because a lot of development experts are saying, yes, it's ideal to say, oh, country X, the Philippines, should increase savings. But for a poor country, di ba, when we talked about module 2, the poor consume most of what they earn. Kasi nga you're poor. Di ba? If you're not earning enough, then majority of what you have, you spend. So that's the same for countries. Yung nga sinasabi nila, that's ideal, but it's not necessarily achievable for a lot of developing countries, like the Philippines, for example, or more backward countries like the ones in Africa, for example, or South Asia, like Bangladesh. So that's a minor weakness. But the more important weakness is, what about people? Again, remember, in basic economics, it's not just capital, it's not just inanimate objects. That's an input to production. What about people? He actually forgot people. He sort of assumed that the productivity of people is the same. It's constant. But no. The productivity of people matters in the same manner as the productivity of equipment is. So it matters a lot as well. So that's the major weakness of Harold Domar. He did not cover labor productivity. What about the human side? What about the workers? If you, let's say, if the country has so much money, you invest in high tech, but you know, almost everyone just finished a high school education, and it's advanced technology, high tech, you know, biotechnology, for example. Huh? How can those people take advantage of the capital? So it goes, it's symbiotic. No? That's why you have to focus on both. It's not just the efficiency of capital, the productivity of capital, of durable equipment. It's also the productivity of people. That's why there's a term economists use, total factor productivity, TFP. It's basically, think of it as the reverse of capital output ratio. But here, it's in reverse kasi the output is in the numerator, not in the denominator. So it's just reverse. But the one in the denominator is just like your capital. But here, it's capital and labor. No? So it tries to cover all the inputs, especially labor, which Harold Domar was missing. So that's one important thing. No? Because more productive individual, the more we're highly educated, we're well fed, we can reach our full potential. I'll discuss that in the next slide. We'll have productive individuals, productive capital. That's a good combo. And more often than not, more efficient capital needs to be run by well-educated people, by people who are productive. And there's a term for that. It's called human capital. Some SocSc13 teachers discuss this in Module 4. I wanted to discuss it now because this is an important, we won't discuss it anymore, no, separately in Module 4. So I'll discuss it now. The education, I think the education major sections are discussing this separately in section Module 4. So human capital is basically the same as capital, the inanimate capital, the durable goods equipment. So I think of it as us, how productive we are. What's our state of education, state of our well-being. So it's defined by OECD. OECD is basically a rich boys club, rich countries club. But they actually do some good research, some good work, policy prescriptions. They provide support to countries, developing countries like us. They have actually excellent research papers and reports. Good resource. So they define human capital as knowledge, skills, competencies, and attributes embodied in individuals that facilitate the creation of personal, social, and economic well-being. So it's basically related to are we healthy enough? Because if you're not healthy, you get sick all the time. How can you be productive? Are you nourished well? As I have discussed with you, no, they're saying, or there's studies saying that there's danger in the long term in the Philippines because at least 1/3, they say, of children 0 to 5 are at risk of malnutrition. And that actually hampers brain power. So imagine those kids, when they grow up, they will have less mental capacity than, say, Ateneo folks like you. Because they're not well nourished. That takes a toll on that puts a ceiling on your mental capacity, on your productive capacity. Education, no? That's also part of human capital. How have you completed high school, college, and even beyond? In most developed countries, graduate school is, it's expected. It's not, wow, you have a master's or PhD. That's sort of common. So human capital. Think back when you if you haven't reached this far in Module 3 yet in Canvas, think back to Module 2, capabilities approach. Human capital is connected to the capabilities approach. It's basically the elements we need to actualize our full potential. The skills that we need, the education that we need, the health that we need to keep us growing. And the income, non-income parameters. That's why, go back to your CBMS or to the multidimensional poverty index. It's all, a lot of the non-income indicators are about health, education, and nutrition. Majority, diba? In CBMS. In some of the LGUs, that was the problem. Okay? So again, if you want to add to what Harold Domar was saying, to focus, just to recap, and Rosto as well, to summarize the two models and to add to their weaknesses. What's good, the lesson here is, it's good that they focus on investment. The basic economic computation of GDP is investment. If you increase any of the elements, the C or the I or the G or the NX, it will increase the pie. But we don't have to elaborate on this. This is for economics majors. But investment-led growth is really preferred compared to consumption-led. They're saying Philippines is consumption-led. It's not really investment-led. Basically, what they're trying to say, try to focus on investment because it ensures a virtuous growth cycle. Why is it better than consumption? I'll simplify this. If you spend your money on, let's say, pizza, I don't know why I keep thinking about pizza. Let's say pizza. Once you consume pizza, that's it, right? It won't produce another pizza. But if I produce on a durable good and maintain it properly, the same money that I spend on a year's worth of pizza, if I convert that to, let's say, durable equipment, that will produce more. It's a virtuous growth cycle because you're spending something which helps the economy, and at the same time, you're producing something which can be sold. So it's a virtuous growth cycle. So that is preferred. If you combine it with Rosto, investment is a key feature of manufacturing. Because you can't have manufacturing without investing in factories, machineries, buildings, etc. And we want to diversify on that investment, have a broad range of manufacturing. As I mentioned, the criticism of the Philippines when we discuss the structuralist approach next week, or as you see in Canvas, we don't have a good and deep manufacturing. You're saying, we export, as some of you will probably know, we export a lot of semiconductors, which is used for computers. That's actually, in a sense, false. What we really do, we don't export really high-tech stuff. We import materials. The only thing that we do here in the Philippines, we add labor, we have people assembling it, then we ship it back, and then who makes money? The chip makers, not us, because we only contribute so much. Again, because we don't have our own, let's say, ability to produce from the entire chip. We just assemble. We can produce Samsung chips for Apple or Samsung. By the way, Apple uses Samsung chips, in case you didn't know. And to add to the models, they have good lessons for us to grow the economy. We also want to take advantage of the criticisms. What's lacking? So we complement. Ganun naman in economics or in development, if there's a criticism of a model, then we try to see what can be added to make it better. That's what model building is. So we add human capital. So we want productive capital, but we also want productive people. Because both of them, if you're well educated, you do your master's eventually, complete college, you will earn more. You can contribute more to society by creating your own businesses, or being a good employee, by producing more. When I say producing more, production doesn't necessarily mean goods only. It could mean services. So if you, let's say, become a programmer, the computer science guys, and become really good programmers and export your expertise, that's production. That contributes to our economy. So it's not just goods, it's also services. Any questions? All right. Yes, it's basically it's really more a function of population as well. Because, for example, in the Philippines, we're 100 million plus. So every day, those 100 million people need to consume something. It's driven from demand also. But again, if you compare, we'll go to this when we analyze the structure of the economy. I think in Canvas, I provided some figures. If we compare ourselves with our neighbors, Vietnam, etc., our consumption levels as a share or proportion of the economy is really much higher, because we're not really saving a lot that we can really flow back into investment. It's really on the, again, if you go back to this one, we have a higher share here than all of these things. Actually, sorry, we have high share both in the C and the G, because G is also consumption, but consumption or expenditure done by government. So it's both of this, taking a higher share than investment or exports. So consumption is really that. So so because we have a big population, that's one of the implications of that. We have big population, so we consume a lot. But we still, the point is, maybe we can still boost our investment some more, because it's pretty obvious if you see the statistics. We don't manufacture a lot. It's not deep. And we don't really invest more, because it's really consumption driven. All right, any other questions? Okay, one more point. Sorry, I forgot about this. Uh, um, Back to the weakness about savings. No? They kept saying, what about the poor countries? They don't necessarily have savings like us. No? We consume more. Uh, how can we invest? Here, there's also this saying where it's not necessarily just people in the Philippines converting their savings into investment. What if we don't have that? Another way of boosting investment is to look outside. We attract foreign investment. And that's what we've done in the past decade. No? So all the call centers, all the, not just BPOs, no, but other foreign businesses, that's foreign investment. No? All the imported brands that you see, they set up shop here, that's foreign investment. So it's not necessarily us doing the investment. It's all, we can also attract foreigners to plug the gaps in our investment. So that's another way of actually boosting investment. Just don't look inside, but also look outside. All right. The Canvas course also made you watch a video, not on K-pop, but Korean. Of course, Korea is known as K-pop. I don't watch K-pop, but Korean movies, Netflix, yes, and series. My wife loves it. I won't discuss this because some of you haven't answered or provided your comments or inputs in the discussion boards yet. So I won't discuss that now. Last point, no, maybe the last 5 minutes of this class, I'll discuss the neoclassical. Again, we'll stop here. We'll reserve the other half of module 3 next week. The invisible hand. So for the neoclassical, think of neoclassical as basically a free markets approach. Trusting the market. No? Capitalists will do good, unfettered, leave them be. So if you've done your basic economics, you might remember Adam Smith's invisible hand. And I included this in Canvas course. I won't necessarily have to verbalize this now or say this now. Basically, what Adam Smith is saying, there's like an invisible hand in the economy that directs allocation of resources. Economics is all about allocation of scarce resources. That at the end of the day makes sure that, because of supply and demand, they match together, private sector produces, and it's evenly distributed so that people with needs get what they need. No? It's basically somehow there's an invisible hand directing that everything is provided for when you just leave the market to be. So he was an advocate. This was way back in 1776, in the Wealth of Nations book. He was an advocate of free markets, laissez-faire. The term laissez-faire, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, it basically means leave them be. Leave the markets be. Leave the private sector alone. They'll do good. They'll make sure that people have what they need. That's the invisible hand in a sense. Because somehow an invisible hand, because of the self-interest of the producers, of the sellers, matched with the self-interest or the needs of the consumers, somehow it will all work out. That's basic economics. Supply and demand will eventually hit a good equilibrium. Because if you forget everything about economics, don't forget supply and demand. That's the basic gospel truth of economics. So is that real? No? Is that invisible hand really orchestrating so that people get what they need, the private sector produces what's needed, people get what they want? Or is it more capitalism does this? There are people left behind. The truth is somewhere in the middle, as in many things. It's not as bad or as evil as this, Although a lot of people get left behind in a capitalist society, and it's not ideal as this picture portrays it. The point about not subscribing to a really free market approach is the concept of market failure and externalities. Basically, what this is saying is if you leave the markets to be the private sector to be, in many ways, they can provide the best innovation, best technology, better than governments. But not necessarily. There can be abuses. The best example of market failure is externalities. When we say externalities, we mean that it could be positive or negative. No? Externalities is you're not privy or you're not part of whatever task that enterprise is doing, and then you get benefit out of it. Benefit or consequence. So pollution is the most common example of negative externalities. So a factory, you are not involved in that factory, in that enterprise whatsoever, but if it's near your house, it's polluting your air, then that's negative externality. You're not part of it, but you get affected. On the flip side, if, for example, a business builds infrastructure that benefits households that are not part of the business, and let's say that they build a road for their business, but they let others pass by it, and that cuts the travel time of people. That's a positive externality. You're not part of that initiative, but then you benefit or you suffer because of it. So we can't leave the private sector to be, because that can happen. Negative externalities can happen. So it's not completely letting them be. Also, in some instances, there are some goods or services that are inherently supposed to be provided by government. Military, for example, you don't expect the private sector to do that. Private sector can produce goods that can be used by military, but not provide military services. That's inherently a government function. The third market failure is there's no business. It doesn't make business sense for the private sector to enter into that. Let's say in the far-flung areas, we want people to have internet connectivity, but there's only 10 households there. It's too expensive for PLDT to build a tower just for those 10 people. So in those cases, it's government that steps in, or electricity for that matter. It's too expensive, there's no business case, government steps in and covers for it. So if the private sector can produce, or it doesn't make business sense for the private sector because they're in business, that's why they're called business, they're in business, then it's government sometimes that have to step in, because the private sector doesn't respond to needs. And the last market failure, I also included a link to a short self-study module. It's like 3-4 pages. It's produced by this newly created agency called Philippine Competition. It's called Abuse of Dominant Position. I'll give an example. Let's say SM. I'm not saying SM does this. No? So for example, SM wants really to kill all of the other supermarkets. Let's say SM Market wants to kill all of their competitor supermarkets. What they can do is, as an abuse, they can try to sell, they can do predatory pricing. What that means is they can sell their goods for a short time, really cheap, below cost, which is kind of stupid, no? If you think about it, but they can sell at a cost so that the customers of their competitors will transfer to them, and after a few months, those competitors will close shop, leaving them as a monopoly, as the only provider. When that happens, then they start jacking up the price again. So that's an example of abuse dominant position. It's a scenario where really strong companies in their own sectors abuse their authority and try to do things that will try to unfairly kill the opposition. Because it's unfair. If you price below cost, that's unfair, just to cut your competition. You can explore more in the document I sent. So the last thing is, so is capitalism bad? Should we follow the communists or socialists saying, do we reverse course? Let government take over all corporations. Do we reverse course? You've probably seen in the news a couple of years back, Occupy Wall Street. That was a response to the financial crisis. They're saying the rich are bad, capitalism is bad. It's not bad per se. In many cases, as I said, we don't have to reverse course. We don't have to kill. We don't have to kill capitalism. In many cases, private sector provides expertise, innovation, cutting-edge technology. But government needs to make sure the market doesn't run wild. Either come up with rules, preventive rules and regulations so that they don't get tempted to do bad things, or when they do bad things, have remedies, have penalties. So there's still a function for government. What we're saying here is we can trust the market in general, but there's still a role for government to play to keep watch over the market, make sure they're not abusing. And in many cases, if the private sector can't provide for everything, government steps in. So capitalism is not inherently bad, but sometimes it's not sufficient. That's why government needs to step in. And that's the last thing I want to talk about. There's this paradigm called social democracy. A lot of Jesuits subscribe to this idea of being social democrats. For consideration, this is my personal thing. This is a vision I subscribe to. I'm not forcing you guys, but this is a good paradigm that you can think of. Basically, social democracy is facilitating or trying to do social justice, to promote social justice. You've heard that term from your theology classes. And in your fourth year, in your theory of liberation theology, you'll hear this quite often. But within a democracy and a capitalist framework. So we're not trying to we're not trying to destroy capitalism, but we just want to make sure that there's more social measures. There's more participatory democracy, more income distribution, not forced, no? But again, going back to the capabilities approach, you provide more opportunities to even to level the playing field so that even the poor can compete eventually because they have good opportunities for education, good quality education, etc. And the economy is regulated well, without stifling the business sector. And there are good social welfare provisions. If you want good examples, go to the Nordic countries, Finland, Western countries, Northern Netherlands, very egalitarian. They're capitalists, they're democracies, but they have a lot of emphasis and focus on social welfare and good regulation. France is also sort of like this. No? Actually, in France, they tax the rich 80%, I think. The richest people, 70 or 80% to fund social welfare. And healthcare is free for all of these advanced Western countries. Actually. So that's a possible paradigm that you can adopt, that I advocate for, but feel free. I want to warn you again, let's not go for socialist or communism where government takes control and assigns everyone what to do, equalizes income. No, we want to equalize opportunities, not wealth. Because what's the incentive for you to work hard if government will just assign you what to do? Diba? It's equalizing opportunities, but still within a capitalist framework. But because what we've proven, even in Module 1, in the introduction, is the private sector actually provides a lot of expertise, innovation, etc. So we're not out to destroy that. Let them flourish, but just make sure that they're not abusing. So that's the end of this module. I'm happy to entertain questions on anything, even your assignment. Okay, I don't see any questions. But again, remember, my consultation hours are Tuesdays from 6:30 to 8, Wednesdays after class, and Fridays 3 to 5 p.m. Again, as you guys still remember, it can't be just two. The two of us has to be a third. There has to be a third party involved to comply with the rules. Are we okay? Again, if you have short queries, email is also fine. No more queries. Again, for your classmates who are not able to join, I will post this. The good thing with Zoom is it's like YouTube, no? It automatically tries to transcribe the whole thing. So while you're watching the video, you'll have a transcription on the side, which is actually kind of cool. So most likely next week we'll also use Zoom. I think I like it better than Google. All right. I think you guys might be hungry. I'm hungry too. We'll try to make the next class more interactive again, just like Module 2. But I wanted just a short session because it's just the first half of Module 3. And I know some of you are still in the middle of Module 3. Okay? Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your patience. I hope you have a good evening. Have a good Thursday and Friday. Enjoy the rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Hello.
Sorry, yes, Andre. Go ahead.
Sir, this is some of my some of my classmates kasi they're asking me to remind you to upload this recording po. Parang I think wala kang na-upload for module 2.
Okay. Sige, I'll make sure. No? Sige. I think I sent it for in a Google Drive. Sige. I'll definitely module 2. Yun lang.
Yes, sir. And also this, sir. Kasi parang wala yung module 2. So parang they asked me to remind you so that para lang you don't forget if ever.
Sure. Module 2 recording.
And this one, sir. Yes. Both.
Yeah, I'll do that as well. Sige. I'll definitely check that again. Sige, thanks for letting me know, ha? Thanks, Andre. That's it, Andre?
Yes, sir. Yun na po. Thank you.
Thank you.